tired of swiping left and wondering if there is anyone out there looking out for your love life? Did you know that a saint whose own heart was shattered into a million pieces became a special friend to lovers everywhere? Could an actual angel have a divine mission to help people find their perfect match, guiding them step by step? What if the secret to finding companionship involved stories of saints who faced down emperors or even battled mythical dragons? Is it possible that some of history's most revered figures are patrons for single people, offering hope and inspiration in ways you have never imagined? Get ready to discover some truly amazing stories about heavenly helpers for those navigating the single life. Number 12. Saint Valentine, the original champion of love you thought you knew. You have probably sent a Valentine's Day card or received heart-shaped chocolates. But the story behind Saint Valentine is much deeper and more complex than just a commercial holiday. In fact, the exact identity of Saint Valentine is a bit of a historical puzzle, with at least 2 or 3 different individuals named Valentinus, who were martyred in ancient Rome. These stories, though distinct, have blended over centuries to create the figure we associate with love today. One of the most popular legends tells of a priest named Valentine, who lived during the 3rd century in Rome. The Emperor Claudius II, it is said, believed that single men made better soldiers than those with wives and families. So he outlawed marriage for young men. Valentine, seeing the injustice of this decree and valuing the sanctity of marriage, supposedly defied Claudius and continued to perform marriages for young lovers in secret. When Valentine's actions were discovered, Claudius ordered that he be put to death. This tale paints Valentine as a heroic defender of love and marriage, willing to risk everything for others to experience these joys. Another story concerns Valentine of Terni, a bishop who was also martyred. Some accounts suggest he might even be the same person as the Roman priest. This Valentine was also known for his healing abilities and his steadfast faith. Poignant legend associated with Saint Valentine's imprisonment suggests that while he was awaiting his execution, he befriended his jailer's blind daughter. Tradition holds that through his prayers and faith, he miraculously restored her sight. Before his death, it is said he wrote her a farewell note, signing it, "From your Valentine." This phrase has echoed through time, becoming a hallmark of affectionate messages. So how did this martyr, or these martyrs, become so strongly linked with romantic love? Connection is not entirely clear from the earliest records. Some scholars have suggested a link to the ancient Roman festival of Lupercalia, a fertility festival held in mid-February. As Christianity spread, it was common for existing pagan festivals to be Christianized or replaced with Christian commemorations. However, many modern historians debate the strength of this direct connection, suggesting it might be a later embellishment. A more concrete link appears in the writings of the English poet Geoffrey Chaucer in the late 14th century. In his poem Parliament of Fowls, written to honor the first anniversary of the engagement of King Richard II of England to Anne of Bohemia, Chaucer wrote, "For this was on Saint Valentine's Day, when every bird cometh there to choose his mate." This is one of the earliest literary references, linking Saint Valentine's Day with the idea of birds choosing their partners and, by extension, with romantic love among humans. It seems Chaucer's poetic imagery played a significant role in popularizing the romantic associations of the day. By the 18th century, Saint Valentine's Day had evolved into an occasion for lovers to express their affection with gifts and cards. While the historical details about Saint Valentine himself remain somewhat shrouded in mystery, the essence of his legacy revolves around themes of love, sacrifice, and commitment. People began to invoke his name for help in finding a spouse and for blessing their relationships. His story, or stories, remind people of the courage it can take to stand up for love and the importance of human connection. He is remembered not just for romantic love, but for a deep, caring love that extends to friendship and compassion, as shown in the tale of the jailer's daughter. His feast day, February 14th, continues to be a day when many reflect on love in its various forms. Number 11. Saint Raphael the Archangel, your heavenly wingman for happy meetings. Imagine having a divine guide, a celestial helper, whose specific mission includes leading you to your future spouse. That is precisely the role Saint Raphael the Archangel plays in one of the most engaging stories from the Old Testament, found in the Book of Tobit. This narrative is rich with adventure, healing, and, importantly for our theme, a divinely orchestrated matchmaking. The story begins with Tobit, a righteous and devout Israelite living in exile in Nineveh. Despite his piety, Tobit faces many hardships, including going blind. Distressed and praying for death, he remembers a sum of money he once deposited with a kinsman in Media. He decides to send his son Tobias to retrieve it. Tobias, unsure of the way and needing a trustworthy companion for the long and potentially dangerous journey, prays for guidance. This is where Saint Raphael enters the scene, though initially his angelic nature is hidden. He appears as a young man named Azariah, offering to guide Tobias to Media. Tobit, unaware that Azariah is an angel, entrusts his son to him. As they set out, accompanied by Tobias's dog, their adventure truly begins. One of their first significant encounters happens by the Tigris River. As Tobias goes to wash, a large fish leaps out of the water and tries to devour his foot. Raphael instructs Tobias to catch the fish and to save its heart, liver, and gall, explaining that they have medicinal properties. This fish will play a crucial role later in the story. As they approach Ecbatana in Media, Raphael reveals another part of his mission. He tells Tobias about a kinswoman named Sarah, the daughter of Raguel. Sarah is a virtuous young woman, but she is plagued by a terrible sorrow. She has been married 7 times, and each time her husband was killed by a jealous demon, Asmodeus, on their wedding night before the marriage could be consummated. Sarah is in despair, and like Tobit, has prayed for an end to her suffering. Raphael explains to Tobias that according to the law of Moses, as her closest eligible kinsman, Tobias has the right to marry Sarah. He encourages Tobias, assuring him that he will be safe from the demon. Raphael instructs Tobias to use the fish's heart and liver. When he enters the bridal chamber with Sarah, he is to burn these parts on incense, and the smoke will drive Asmodeus away. Tobias, trusting Raphael, agrees to marry Sarah. Upon arriving at Raguel's home, Tobias asks for Sarah's hand in marriage. Raguel, knowing the fate of Sarah's previous husbands, is hesitant, but eventually agrees. On the wedding night, Tobias follows Raphael's instructions. He places the fish's heart and liver on the glowing embers of the incense. The odor fills the room, and the demon Asmodeus flees, bound by Raphael in the distant land of Egypt. Tobias and Sarah pray together, and they survive the night unharmed. Their marriage begins with joy and relief. While Tobias is celebrating his marriage, Raphael travels to Rages to collect Tobit's money, fulfilling that part of the mission as well. After the wedding festivities, Tobias, Sarah, and Raphael return to Nineveh. There, Raphael instructs Tobias to use the fish's gall to anoint his father Tobit's eyes. When he does so, Tobit's sight is miraculously restored. It is only at the end of this incredible journey, with all tasks accomplished, money retrieved, Sarah freed and married, Tobit healed, that Raphael reveals his true identity. He declares, "I am Raphael, one of the 7 angels who stand and serve before the glory of the Lord." He explains that he was sent by God to test Tobit and Sarah, but also to heal them. After delivering his message, he ascends to heaven, leaving Tobit and Tobias in awe. Because of his pivotal role in guiding Tobias, healing both Tobit and Sarah, and successfully uniting Tobias and Sarah in a happy marriage, Saint Raphael the archangel is widely invoked as a patron for those seeking a spouse. He is also the patron of travelers, of happy meetings, of the blind, and of healers. People pray to him for guidance in finding the right partner, for protection on their life's journey, and for healing from physical and emotional ailments. His story offers a powerful image of divine assistance in the often complex path to finding love and companionship. Number 10. St. Anthony of Padua. More than just lost keys, he finds lost hearts too. Many people know St. Anthony of Padua as the go-to saint when something is lost. Dear St. Anthony, please come around. Something is lost and cannot be found is a familiar little prayer for those searching for misplaced keys, wallets, or important documents. But his patronage extends far beyond just missing objects. Tradition also holds him as a powerful intercessor for those seeking to find a life partner, or perhaps a lost love or the lost opportunity for marriage. Born Fernando Martins de Bulhos in Lisbon, Portugal, in 1195, he initially joined the Augustinian order. However, after seeing the relics of 5 Franciscan friars who had been martyred in Morocco, he was inspired by their heroic witness. He felt a strong calling to a simpler, more evangelical life, and joined the new Franciscan order, taking the name Anthony. He hoped to go to Morocco himself and preach, possibly even facing martyrdom. However, illness prevented him from reaching his destination, and a storm-tossed ship eventually landed him in Sicily. From there, he traveled through Italy, where his incredible gift for preaching was discovered somewhat by accident. At an ordination ceremony when the scheduled preacher failed to appear, Anthony was reluctantly asked to speak. He preached with such eloquence, wisdom, and fervor that everyone was astonished. For the rest of his relatively short life, he died at the age of 35. Anthony became a renowned preacher, traveling extensively through Italy and southern France. He was known for his deep knowledge of Scripture, his ability to explain complex theological concepts in simple terms, and his passionate defense of the faith against various heresies of the time. He was so highly regarded that he was declared a doctor of the Church. The origin of his patronage for lost items is linked to a specific story. According to tradition, a novice in Anthony's community, tired of the religious life, decided to leave. When he departed, he took with him Anthony's valuable Psalter, a book containing the Psalms and notes for his sermons and teachings, which was very precious to Anthony in a time before printing presses made books common. Anthony prayed earnestly for the return of his book. The story goes that the repentant novice not only returned the Psalter, but also returned to the Franciscan order. This incident is often cited as the reason people began praying to St. Anthony for help in recovering lost or stolen items. Over time, this patronage for lost things broadened in popular devotion. If St. Anthony could help find a lost book, perhaps he could help find other important things that were lost, like good health, peace of mind, or even a suitable spouse. The transition to becoming a patron for those seeking a marriage partner seems natural in this context. For a single person longing for companionship, a life partner can feel like something precious that is missing from their life. There are many anecdotal accounts and traditions of people, particularly young women in various cultures, praying to St. Anthony for help in finding a good husband. In some regions, there were specific prayers, or novenas, directed to him for this intention. The idea is that St. Anthony, with his powerful intercession, can help guide individuals to their future spouse, or help remove obstacles that might be preventing them from finding love. While his primary fame comes from his powerful preaching and his patronage of lost articles, The understanding of Saint Anthony as a helper in finding a spouse is a deeply rooted tradition in many parts of the world. It reflects a belief in his compassionate intercession for all of life's significant needs, including the profound human desire for love and partnership. His life, dedicated to finding and sharing the truth of the gospel, has inspired millions, and his heavenly assistance is sought for a wide array of concerns, making him a beloved and versatile saint. Number 9. Saint Anne, the grandmother who understands, waiting for good things. Saint Anne holds a special place in Christian tradition as the mother of the Virgin Mary, and, therefore, the grandmother of Jesus Christ. While she is not mentioned by name in the canonical scriptures of the New Testament, her story and her significance are detailed in apocryphal texts, most notably the Proto-Evangelium of James, an early Christian writing dating back to the 2nd century. These texts have profoundly influenced Christian devotion to her. According to these traditions, Anne, whose name means grace or favor, was married to a man named Joachim. They were a devout and righteous couple, known for their piety and generosity. However, they bore a heavy cross. They were childless for many years. In their culture, barrenness was often viewed as a sign of divine displeasure or a source of shame, and it caused Anne and Joachim great sorrow and distress. They prayed fervently and consistently, year after year, for God to bless them with a child. Proto-Evangelium of James recounts that Joachim, feeling particularly shamed by his childlessness during a temple festival, retreated into the wilderness to fast and pray for 40 days. Meanwhile, Anne at home lamented her own barrenness, comparing her situation unfavorably to even the birds of the air who had their young. As they both prayed in their separate distress, an angel appeared to each of them. The angel announced to Anne that she would conceive and bear a child who would be spoken of throughout the world. A similar message was delivered to Joachim, telling him to return home to his wife. Their reunion was joyful, and in due time, Anne conceived and gave birth to a daughter, whom they named Mary. This child, according to Christian belief, was destined to become the mother of God. Anne and Joachim dedicated Mary to service in the temple in Jerusalem from a young age, fulfilling a vow they had made. Because of her own long and patient waiting for a child and her unwavering faith throughout that difficult period, Saint Anne became a powerful symbol of hope and perseverance. She is widely venerated as a patron saint for a variety of needs and groups of people. Naturally, she is a patron of mothers, expectant mothers, and women in labor given her role as the mother of Mary. She is also invoked by those struggling with infertility or childlessness, as she intimately understood that particular pain. Furthermore, Saint Anne is considered a patron saint of unmarried women, particularly those hoping to find a good husband and start a family. Her story resonates with those who are waiting for love, waiting for marriage, waiting for their prayers to be answered. Her example encourages patience, steadfast faith, and trust in God's timing. Just as she and Joachim eventually received their longed-for child, her intercession is sought by those hoping for their own blessings in relationships and family life. Devotion to Saint Anne spread widely throughout the Christian world, both in the East and the West, from the early centuries onward. Many churches and shrines are dedicated to her, and her feast day, July 26th, often celebrated with St. Joachim, is an important date in the liturgical calendar. She is also a patron of grandparents, reflecting her role as Jesus' grandmother, and of various crafts and professions, such as miners, as gold is found in the earth like a hidden treasure, similar to Mary being born from Anne, and cabinet makers. For singles, St. Anne's story offers a comforting message. Waiting can be difficult, and prayers may not always be answered in the way or time frame one expects, but faith and perseverance are powerful virtues. Her life reminds people that even in periods of longing and uncertainty, hope should not be lost, and that good things can indeed come to those who wait with faith. Number 8. Saint Andrew the Apostle, the surprising matchmaker among Jesus' first followers. Saint Andrew the Apostle holds a significant place in Christian history as one of the very first disciples called by Jesus. He was the brother of Simon Peter, another key apostle. Before encountering Jesus, Andrew was a disciple of John the Baptist. The Gospel of John beautifully recounts how, after John the Baptist pointed to Jesus and declared, "Behold, the Lamb of God," Andrew and another disciple immediately followed Jesus and spent the day with him. Convinced that Jesus was the Messiah, Andrew then rushed to find his brother Simon, exclaiming, "We have found the Messiah," and brought Peter to Jesus. This act of bringing his brother to Christ earned Andrew the Greek epithet protokletos, meaning the first call. After Jesus' ascension, tradition holds that Saint Andrew embarked on extensive missionary journeys, preaching the gospel in various lands. Accounts suggest he traveled through Scythia, areas around the Black Sea, Greece, and possibly even as far as modern-day Georgia and Russia. His final missionary work was in Patras, in Achaia, Greece, where he performed many miracles and converted many people, including the wife of the Roman proconsul Aegeates. The proconsul, enraged by his wife's conversion and Andrew's refusal to renounce Christianity, ordered him to be crucified. Saint Andrew is said to have been martyred on a crux di cassata, an X-shaped cross, now commonly known as Saint Andrew's Cross. He reportedly requested this form of crucifixion because he deemed himself unworthy to be crucified on the same type of cross as Jesus. He hung on the cross for 2 or 3 days, continuing to preach to the crowds until his death. His relics were later moved to Constantinople, then to Amalfi in Italy, and parts are also venerated in Scotland, of which he is the patron saint. The St. Andrew's Cross is featured on the Scottish flag, the saltire. While St. Andrew is widely recognized as the patron saint of Scotland, Greece, Russia, Romania, Ukraine, and of fishermen, a nod to his original profession, his patronage also extends, perhaps more surprisingly to some, to unmarried women. This particular association is not as universally known as some of his other patronages, but is present in certain folk traditions and regional customs, particularly in parts of Eastern and Central Europe, and sometimes in Scottish lore. The reasons for this connection are not always explicitly detailed in historical texts, but seem to have emerged from folk piety and customs associated with his feast day, November 30th. In many cultures, the period around late November and early December, leading up to winter, was a time for various divinatory practices. St. Andrew's Eve, the night of November 29th, became a popular occasion for young unmarried women to perform specific rituals or prayers, hoping to discover the identity of their future husband or to ensure they would marry in the coming year. These folk practices varied widely. Some involved interpreting dreams after performing certain actions, such as placing specific items under a pillow. Other customs might include pouring molten wax or lead into water and interpreting the shapes that formed, or even trying to discern a future spouse's face in a mirror by candlelight. These practices, while bordering on superstition, were often intertwined with prayers to St. Andrew for his intercession in finding a good partner. It is possible that because Andrew was the first called and played a role in introducing Peter to Jesus, he was seen as someone who could help introduce or lead an individual to their future spouse. His role as a brave apostle who traveled far and wide, facing hardships for his faith, might also inspire those on their own life journey, seeking companionship and divine guidance. For singles, invoking St. Andrew could be seen as asking for his help in navigating the path to marriage, for courage in seeking a partner who shares their values, or simply for his prayers in this important aspect of life. While not his most prominent patronage, this connection to matchmaking adds another interesting layer to the legacy of this important apostle. Number 7. Saint Genevieve, the fearless shepherdess who protected her city and inspires Solu's strength. Saint Genevieve, the beloved patron saint of Paris, is a figure of immense courage, unwavering faith, and dedicated service. Her life story is not directly about finding a spouse, but rather about finding profound purpose, strength, and leadership, qualities that can be deeply inspiring for single individuals forging their own paths. Born around 422 at Nanterre, a small village near Paris, Genevieve was a simple country girl. A pivotal moment occurred in her childhood when Saint Germanus of Auxerre, a prominent bishop, was passing through Nanterre. He noticed young Genevieve in the crowd and, through divine insight, recognized her future sanctity. He spoke with her, encouraged her devotion, and gave her a brass medal engraved with a cross, which she wore for the rest of her life as a reminder of her consecration to God. From that day, at around the age of 7, Genevieve dedicated herself to a life of piety, prayer, and service. After the death of her parents, Genevieve moved to Paris to live with her godmother. There, she continued her devout life, focusing on prayer, fasting, and charitable works. She was known for her deep spirituality and her concern for the poor and the sick. Despite her youth, her wisdom and holiness began to gain recognition. Genevieve's most famous act of heroism occurred in 451 Atta when Attila the Hun and his invading armies were sweeping across Gaul and threatening to sack Paris. Panic gripped the city, and many citizens prepared to flee. However, Genevieve, with remarkable courage and conviction, urged the Parisians to stay, to pray, and to trust in God's protection. She organized prayer vigils and called for acts of penance. Some were skeptical and even hostile towards her, but her steadfast faith and powerful presence eventually persuaded many. Miraculously, Attila and his forces unexpectedly changed their route, bypassing Paris and sparing the city from destruction. This event cemented Genevieve's status as a protector of Paris and a woman of extraordinary spiritual power. Her leadership and resourcefulness were demonstrated again during a later siege of Paris by Childeric, a Frankish king. As famine gripped the city, Genevieve, risking her own safety, led an expedition of boats up the Seine River, navigating through enemy lines to bring back provisions and grain for the starving population. Her bravery and practical action saved the city from starvation. Throughout her long life, she lived to be around 80 years old. Genevieve remained a spiritual guide and a source of strength for the people of Paris. She was a friend and advisor to kings, including Clovis I, the first king of the Franks to unite all the Frankish tribes under one ruler. It is said she influenced Clovis and his wife Saint Clotilde in their decision to build a church in Paris dedicated to Saints Peter and Paul, which later became the Abbey of Saint Genevieve and her eventual resting place. Saint Genevieve's life offers a powerful example of how a single individual, committed to their faith and purpose, can have a profound impact on the world around them. For single people, her story can be particularly inspiring. She did not marry, dedicating her life entirely to God and to the service of others. She found fulfillment, meaning, and exercised remarkable leadership but through a marital relationship, but through her own inner strength, her deep spirituality, and her unwavering commitment to her calling. She is a patron for those seeking courage in the face of adversity, for those striving to live a life of purpose, and for those who may feel alone but are called to make a difference. Her story highlights the power of individual faith and action, demonstrating that a single life, lived with conviction and love, can be incredibly fruitful and heroic. While not a matchmaking saint, Saint Genevieve stands as a testament to the strength and significance that can be found in a life dedicated to a higher calling, regardless of marital status. Number 6. Saint Roch, or Rocco, the pilgrim saint. Saint Roch, also known as Rocco or Roch, is a beloved saint particularly invoked against plague and infectious diseases. His life story is one of profound compassion, selfless service, and also of personal suffering and isolation, which can resonate with individuals experiencing loneliness or seeking to find meaning through helping others. Born in Montpellier, France, likely in the late 13th or early 14th century, Roch came from a noble and wealthy family. Tradition holds that he was born with a red cross-shaped birthmark on his chest. His parents died when he was young, around the age of 20, deeply devout. Roch decided to follow the example of Christ by renouncing his worldly possessions. He distributed his fortune among the poor and set out on a pilgrimage to Rome, dressed as a humble pilgrim. As he journeyed through Italy, a severe plague epidemic was ravaging the country. Instead of avoiding the afflicted areas, Roch dedicated himself to caring for the sick in hospitals and public places. He ministered to countless plague victims in towns like Acquapendente, Cesena, Rome, Rimini, and Piacenza. Many accounts attribute miraculous healings to his prayers and the sign of the cross he would make over the sick. His compassionate care and the reported miracles earned him a reputation for holiness. Ironically, while tirelessly caring for others in Piacenza, Saint Roch himself contracted the plague. Not wanting to be a burden to others or to spread the infection in the town's hospital, he withdrew to a remote forest to die alone. There, according to legend, a spring of fresh water miraculously welled up to provide him with drink. And each day, a dog belonging to a nearby nobleman named Gothard would bring him a loaf of bread, licking his plague sores, which began to heal. Gothard, intrigued by his dog's daily disappearance with bread, followed him one day and discovered Roch. Moved by Roch's plight and piety, Gothard began to care for him and became his disciple. After recovering from the plague, Saint Roch eventually decided to return to his hometown of Montpellier. However, his appearance had changed so much due to his sufferings and austerities that he was not recognized. The region was embroiled in civil unrest, and he was arrested as a spy. Despite his innocence, Roch did not reveal his noble identity, choosing to live out his remaining years in obscurity and imprisonment, embracing this final suffering as God's will. He spent about 5 years in prison, continuing his life of prayer and penance until his death. Only after his death was his true identity discovered, possibly through his birthmark or an identifying document. Saint Roch is widely venerated as a patron saint against plague, cholera, and other epidemic diseases. He is also the patron of invalids, surgeons, and, significantly for our theme, bachelors. Additionally, he is invoked by dog lovers, due to the faithful dog who sustained him, and by those who are falsely accused or have suffered unjustly. His patronage of bachelors might stem from several aspects of his life. He lived a life of celibacy, dedicated to God and service. His renunciation of his noble status and wealth to become a poor pilgrim, and his solitary period in the forest, and later in prison, could speak to those who are single, perhaps by choice or by circumstance. His story highlights themes of self-reliance, resilience in isolation, and finding purpose outside of traditional family structures. For single individuals, Saint Roch's life offers several points of connection. His profound compassion and dedication to serving those in need can inspire singles to find fulfillment in charitable work and making a difference in their communities. His experience of illness and isolation in the forest, before being aided by the dog and Gothard, can resonate with feelings of loneliness that some singles may experience, offering a sense of understanding and companionship from a heavenly friend. His ultimate perseverance in faith, despite immense hardship, speaks to the strength one can find in spirituality. While he may not be a saint, one prays to for finding a partner. He is a powerful intercessor for health, for protection in difficult times, and an example of a life lived with heroic virtue and purpose, even in solitude. Number 5. Saint Catherine of Alexandria, the wise woman who debated philosophers and had a mystical marriage. Saint Catherine of Alexandria is one of the most renowned virgin martyrs of the early Church, celebrated for her extraordinary intellect, unshakable faith, and courageous defense of Christianity in the face of imperial persecution. Her story is particularly inspiring for those who value wisdom, learning, and steadfast conviction, and she is a patroness of unmarried girls and students. According to tradition, Catherine was born in Alexandria, Egypt, a major center of learning and culture in the ancient world, around the late 3rd or early 4th century. She was said to be of noble, possibly even royal, lineage, and was exceptionally beautiful and highly educated. She immersed herself in the study of philosophy, sciences, and rhetoric, becoming renowned for her profound wisdom and eloquence even at a young age. At some point, Catherine converted to Christianity after receiving a vision. The story of her conversion often involves an encounter with a hermit who instructed her in the Christian faith and told her of Christ as the ultimate spouse of the soul. Deeply moved, Catherine dedicated her virginity to Christ. Later traditions, particularly popular in the medieval period, describe a mystical marriage to Christ, where she received a ring from him in a vision, symbolizing her spiritual union with the divine. Her most famous confrontation occurred when the Roman Emperor Maxentius, or sometimes Maximinus Daia, depending on the account, came to Alexandria and initiated a fierce persecution of Christians. He demanded that all citizens offer sacrifice to pagan gods. Catherine, then a young woman, perhaps around 18, boldly approached the emperor and rebuked him for his cruelty and for worshipping false idols. She then proceeded to engage him in a sophisticated philosophical and theological debate, arguing for the truth of Christianity. Impressed by her intellect but angered by her defiance, Maxentius could not refute her arguments himself. So he summoned 50 of the most learned pagan philosophers and orators from across the empire to debate Catherine and persuade her to renounce her faith. However, Catherine, filled with wisdom by the Holy Spirit, not only successfully defended her Christian beliefs, but also, through her eloquent arguments and profound knowledge, converted all 50 philosophers to Christianity. Enraged, Maxentius had all these newly converted philosophers immediately executed. The emperor then tried to win Catherine over by offering her riches, power, and even marriage, proposing to make her his empress if she would relent. Catherine steadfastly refused, declaring that Christ was her only spouse. Furious at her rejection, Maxentius ordered her to be imprisoned and tortured. While in prison, she was visited by the empress and the emperor's chief general, Porphyrius, along with 200 soldiers. Catherine spoke to them with such conviction about her faith that they too converted and were subsequently martyred. Finally, Maxentius condemned Catherine to death by a horrific instrument of torture, a breaking wheel. This device consisted of a spiked wheel, or sometimes 2 or 4 wheels, designed to crush and tear the victim's body. However, as Catherine was about to be placed on the wheel, legend says that she prayed, and an angel descended from heaven and shattered the device, its fragments flying off and killing some of the pagan onlookers. This miraculous intervention further solidified her image as divinely protected. Thwarted yet again, Maxentius ultimately ordered Catherine to be beheaded. After her martyrdom, tradition holds that angels carried her body to Mount Sinai, where a monastery, St. Catherine's Monastery, was later built in her honor and still stands dataeously functioning Christian monasteries in the world. St. Catherine of Alexandria became an immensely popular saint, especially during the Middle Ages. She is venerated as one of the 14 holy helpers, a group of saints invoked for various needs. Her patronage is extensive. She is the patron saint of unmarried girls and virgins, due to her own consecrated virginity and refusal of earthly marriage. Students, philosophers, theologians, scholars, librarians, teachers, lawyers, apologists, defenders, for single women, particularly those who are intellectually inclined pursuing education, or strong in their convictions. Saint Catherine offers a powerful role model. Her story celebrates wisdom, courage in one's beliefs, and the idea that one's primary commitment can be to spiritual ideals. Her mystical marriage also offers a spiritual framework for understanding profound love and dedication outside of conventional human marriage. She is a reminder that a life of intellectual pursuit and unwavering faith can be a source of immense strength and influence. Number 4. Saint Margaret of Antioch, the dragon-slaying saint who defied unwanted advances. Saint Margaret of Antioch, also known as Saint Marina, the great martyr in the Eastern Orthodox Church, is a figure whose legendary life is filled with dramatic encounters, steadfast faith, and remarkable resilience. While some details of her story are considered legendary, her cult became immensely popular in the Middle Ages, and she was one of the saints whose voices were heard by Saint Joan of Arc. According to the traditional accounts, Margaret was the daughter of a pagan priest named Aedesius in Antioch of Pisidia, in modern-day Turkey, during the reign of the Roman Emperor Diocletian, a time of intense Christian persecution in the late 3rd or early 4th century. Her mother died when Margaret was young, and she was nursed and raised by a devout Christian woman in the countryside. Through her nurse, Margaret learned about Christianity and embraced the faith, secretly dedicating her virginity to Christ. When her father discovered her conversion, he was furious and disowned her. Margaret then lived with her nurse, working as a shepherdess. One day, while she was tending sheep, Olybrius, the Roman prefect or governor of the region, saw her and was captivated by her beauty. He desired to take her as his wife if she was of noble birth, or as his concubine if she was a commoner. He sent his men to bring her to him. When Margaret was brought before Olybrius, she openly declared herself a Christian. The prefect tried to persuade her to renounce her faith and worship the pagan gods, promising her riches and honor if she complied. Margaret steadfastly refused, proclaiming her unwavering devotion to Jesus Christ. Enraged by her defiance, Olybrius had her imprisoned and subjected to horrific tortures. The most famous legend associated with Saint Margaret occurred during her imprisonment. While she was praying in her dungeon, Satan appeared to her in the form of a ferocious dragon, intending to terrify her and break her spirit. The dragon swallowed her whole. However, Margaret, armed with her faith, made the sign of the cross, or in some versions, held up the small cross she always carried. The cross irritated the dragon's insides, causing it to miraculously burst open, and Margaret emerged unharmed. This dramatic event became a central image in her iconography, often depicted with her foot on the dragon or emerging from it. In another encounter, Satan appeared to her again, this time in the guise of a man to tempt her further. Margaret, recognizing the deception, is said to have grabbed him, thrown him to the ground, and placed her foot on his head, triumphing over him. Despite these trials and tortures, which included being burned with torches and thrown into icy water, Margaret remained resolute in her faith. Many who witnessed her endurance and miracles were converted to Christianity. Finally, Olybrius, unable to break her will, ordered her to be beheaded. Because of the legend of her emerging unharmed from the dragon, Saint Margaret became particularly invoked as a patron saint of pregnant women and for safe childbirth as the baby emerges from the mother, similar to how Margaret emerged from the dragon. She was also called upon for protection against demonic influence, temptations, and for strength in times of trial. Her story of resisting the unwanted advances of Olybrius and her firm stance for her beliefs also made her an emblem of purity and fortitude. For single individuals, Saint Margaret's story offers several layers of inspiration. Her steadfastness in the face of intense pressure to marry against her will or compromise her values can be a source of courage for those navigating relationship choices and societal expectations. Her triumph over the dragon of temptation and evil can be seen metaphorically as overcoming personal struggles, fears, or external pressures that might try to divert one from their chosen path or beliefs. She represents resilience, the power of faith to overcome adversity, and the importance of staying true to oneself. While her primary patronage for childbirth might seem specific, her broader image as a conqueror of evil and a model of unyielding faith makes her a powerful intercessor for anyone facing significant challenges or seeking to live a life of integrity and courage, regardless of their marital status. Her story is a dramatic reminder of the strength found in conviction. Number 3. Saint Agnes, the young martyr who valued her faith over any earthly suitor. Saint Agnes is one of the most celebrated and beloved virgin martyrs of the Roman Catholic Church, renowned for her youth, her purity, and her unwavering commitment to her faith in the face of brutal persecution. Her story, traditionally dated to the persecutions under Emperor Diocletian, around 304 odd, has captivated Christians for centuries and offers a powerful example of spiritual dedication. Agnes was a young Roman girl, believed to be only about 12 or 13 years old at the time of her martyrdom. She came from a noble Christian family and was known for her beauty and virtue. From a very early age, Agnes had decided to consecrate her virginity to Jesus Christ, whom she considered her heavenly spouse. Her beauty attracted the attention of many young noblemen in Rome who wished to marry her. Among them was the son of Sempronius, the prefect of Rome. He ardently sought her hand, offering her rich gifts and promising her a life of luxury. However, Agnes consistently refused all suitors, explaining that she had already pledged herself to a spouse whom they could not see, one far greater and more beautiful than any earthly man. Angered by her repeated rejections and suspecting the nature of her mysterious spouse, the prefect's son and other spurned suitors eventually denounced Agnes to the authorities as a Christian, a dangerous accusation during the ongoing persecution. When brought before the prefect Sempronius, Agnes calmly and courageously affirmed her faith. Prefect, initially perhaps pitying her youth, tried to persuade her to renounce Christianity and offer sacrifice to the Roman gods, particularly Vesta, the goddess of the hearth, whose priestesses were virgins. Agnes steadfastly refused. Enraged by her defiance, and possibly pressured by his son, the prefect resorted to cruel measures to break her spirit. He threatened her with being sent to a brothel, a place of public shame, intending to defile her and mock her vow of virginity. According to tradition, when Agnes was dragged naked to the brothel, her hair miraculously grew long and thick, covering her entire body like a garment, shielding her from lewd gazes. Furthermore, when a young man attempted to approach her with impure intentions, he was struck blind by a dazzling light, or in some versions an angel appeared and protected her, and the man was struck dead or paralyzed only to be revived by Agnes's prayers, leading to his conversion. Seeing that these attempts to shame and defile her were failing, the prefect ordered her to be burned at the stake. However, when the pyre was lit, the flames miraculously divided, refusing to touch her, or the fire was extinguished by her prayers. Some accounts say the flames even turned back on her executioners. Finally, frustrated by these supernatural interventions, the authorities decreed that she be executed by the sword, a common method for Roman citizens. Agnes is said to have met her death with joy and composure, like a bride going to meet her spouse, her neck bared for the executioner's stroke. She was martyred in Rome, and her body was buried in a catacomb on the Via Nomentana. which later became the site of the magnificent Basilica di Sant'Agnese Fiori Limora, St. Agnes outside the walls. St. Agnes quickly became a symbol of purity, innocence, and heroic Christian fortitude. Her feast day, January 21st, is marked by a special tradition in Rome. 2 lambs are blessed at her basilica, and their wool is later shorn to be woven into palliums, the distinctive liturgical vestments worn by the Pope and metropolitan archbishops, symbolizing their pastoral authority and union with the See of Rome. The lambs are a direct reference to her name, Agnes, which sounds like the Latin word agnus, meaning lamb, a symbol of Christ and of innocence. Saint Agnes is the patron saint of virgins, chastity, engaged couples, young girls, and rape survivors. Her connection to engaged couples might seem counterintuitive, given her own refusal of earthly marriage. However, it can be understood in the context of seeking a spouse who respects one's faith and values, or praying for purity and steadfastness within an engagement. For singles, particularly young women, St. Agnes offers an example of profound self-worth, unwavering commitment to one's deepest convictions, and the courage to stand firm against societal pressures or unsuitable advances. Her story emphasizes that one's identity and worth are not solely defined by marital status, but by inner virtue and spiritual dedication. She is a powerful intercessor for those striving to live a life of integrity and purity, and for strength in upholding one's personal and spiritual commitments. Number 2. Saint Nicholas of Myra, the original Secret Santa, was also a singles champion. Saint Nicholas of Myra, who lived in the 4th century, is one of the most beloved and universally recognized saints in both Eastern and Western Christianity. While many today associate him primarily with Santa Claus and gift-giving at Christmas, his historical significance and patronage are far broader, including a special care for unmarried people, particularly young women facing difficult circumstances. Nicholas was born in Patara, a town in Lycaonia, part of Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, to wealthy and devout Christian parents. From a young age, he was known for his piety and compassion. His parents died in an epidemic when he was still young, leaving him a substantial inheritance. Nicholas, inspired by Jesus' words, "To sell what you own and give the money to the poor," decided to use his wealth to help those in need, often doing so secretly to avoid drawing attention to himself. He eventually became the Bishop of Myra, an important coastal city in Lycaonia. As a bishop, he was known for his zealous faith, his powerful preaching, his defense of orthodoxy against Arianism, a heresy that denied the divinity of Christ, and his unwavering compassion for his flock, especially the poor and the oppressed. Numerous stories and legends highlight his extraordinary generosity and his miraculous interventions. The most famous story connected to Saint Nicholas, and the one that directly links him to the patronage of unmarried people, concerns 3 poor young women. Their father was a once respectable man who had fallen into extreme poverty. He was so destitute that he could not provide dowries for his 3 daughters. In that society, a dowry was essential for a young woman to make a respectable marriage. Without dowries, these young women faced a bleak future, possibly even being forced into prostitution to survive. Nicholas, hearing of their plight, decided to help them anonymously. On 3 separate occasions, he secretly went to their house at night and threw a bag of gold coins through an open window, or in some versions, down the chimney. The first bag provided a dowry for the eldest daughter, allowing her to marry. He did the same for the second daughter. When it came time for the third daughter, the father was determined to discover their secret benefactor. He kept watch, and when Nicholas tossed the third bag of gold, the father caught him. He fell at Nicholas's feet in gratitude, but Nicholas, embarrassed by the attention, made him promise not to reveal his identity. This act of providing dowries for the free poor maidens is a cornerstone of St. Nicholas's reputation as a protector of unmarried women and a facilitator of happy marriages. By providing the means for them to marry honorably, he saved them from a desperate fate and enabled them to start new lives. This story is also one of the primary inspirations for the tradition of secret gift-giving associated with him, which eventually evolved into the modern Santa Claus figure. Beyond this specific story, Saint Nicholas was renowned for many other acts of kindness and miraculous interventions. He is said to have saved sailors from storms, miraculously multiplied grain during a famine, and even resurrected 3 young boys who had been murdered and pickled in a brine tub by a wicked butcher. These diverse accounts contribute to his wide-ranging patronage. He is the patron saint of children because of his generosity and the story of the resurrected boys. Sailors and fishermen, due to his interventions in sea storms, merchants, pawnbrokers, often symbolized by 3 gold balls, representing the 3 bags of gold, archers, repentant thieves, brewers, and importantly unmarried people, brews seeking a spouse. For single individuals, St. Nicholas offers a powerful image of a caring intercessor who understands the practical and emotional needs associated with finding a partner and establishing a family. His story of the 3 dowries highlights a concern for the well-being and future happiness of young people. People have traditionally prayed to him for help in finding a suitable spouse, for financial assistance that might facilitate marriage, or simply for guidance and support during their single years. His legacy is one of profound charity, compassionate intervention, and a joyful spirit of giving, making him a beloved heavenly friend to people from all walks of life, including those navigating the path to marriage. Number 1. Saint Dwynwen, the Welsh princess whose broken heart healed others' loves. In the landscape of patron saints for lovers nestled in the rich traditions of Wales is Saint Dwynwen, a figure whose own romantic sorrows transformed her into a special advocate for those seeking happiness in love. Her story, dating back to the 5th century, is a poignant tale of love, heartbreak, and selfless prayer, making her the Welsh patron saint of lovers. Her feast day, January 25th, is celebrated in Wales, much like St. Valentine's Day elsewhere. Dwynwen was said to be one of the numerous daughters of Brychan Brycheiniog, a legendary 5th century king of Brycheiniog, Brecknockshire, in South Wales. She was known for her beauty and virtue. The most popular version of her story tells of her deep love for a young nobleman or prince named Maelon Daffodril. Dwynwen wished to marry Maelon, and he reciprocated her affections. However, her father, King Brychan, had already arranged for her to marry another suitor, a prince from a different region for political or other reasons. He forbade Dwynwen's union with Maelon. Heartbroken and distraught by her father's decree and the impossibility of marrying her true love, Dwynwen fled into the woods to pray. She tearfully implored God to free her from her overwhelming love for Maelon, as it caused her such pain, and to help her forget him. In her distress, she fell asleep. While she slept, an angel appeared to her in a dream. The angel gave Dwynwen a sweet potion to drink, telling her it would help her forget Maelon and cure her of her heartache. However, the potion had an unexpected and tragic effect on Maelon. When he, or Dwynwen in some versions, administered it to him, thinking it would ease his sorrow too, drank it, he was turned into a block of ice. When Dwynwen awoke and saw Maelon frozen solid, her sorrow deepened, even though her own romantic feelings might have been quelled. God then granted Dwynwen 3 wishes. Her first wish, selfless and compassionate, was that Maelon be thawed and restored to life and happiness. Her second wish was that, through her intercession, God would meet the hopes and dreams of all true lovers and protect them from sorrow. Her third and final wish was that she herself should never marry, choosing instead to dedicate her life to God. All 3 of her wishes were granted. Malon was freed from the ice, and Dwynwen, true to her vow, retreated from the world to live a life of religious devotion. She traveled to the remote and beautiful Land Dwyn Island, Land Dwyn, off the west coast of Anglesey in North Wales. There she founded a religious community or hermitage and lived out her days in prayer and solitude, becoming known for her holiness. After her death, a church was built on Land Dwyn Island in her memory, and it became an important shrine throughout the Middle Ages. Pilgrims, especially those with troubles of the heart, would flock to her. Well Finan Dwynwen, seeking her intercession. The well was said to have sacred fish or eels, whose movements could predict the faithfulness of a lover or the future happiness of a couple. Various rituals were associated with the well, such as dropping breadcrumbs or handkerchiefs into the water and observing the behavior of the fish. Saint Dwynwen's story is powerful because it stems from her own profound romantic suffering. Her broken heart did not lead to bitterness, but to a deep empathy for others experiencing the joys and pains of love. Her second wish, to champion the cause of true lovers, cemented her role as their patron saint. She is invoked by those seeking a faithful partner, by couples facing obstacles in their relationship, and by those nursing a broken heart, asking for healing and guidance. Her choice to remain unmarried and dedicate her life to God after experiencing such intense love and loss also offers a unique perspective. It suggests that even when romantic love does not unfold as hoped, a life can still be filled with purpose, devotion, and service to others. Saint Dwynwen's legacy is a testament to the brooding power of love even in its sorrowful aspects, and her shrine on Land Dwyn Island remains a place of pilgrimage for those seeking her heavenly help in matters of the heart. She truly is a saint who understands the complexities of love from a deeply personal place.